Alright, as promised, more Rise of the Beasts reviews. Even though, dear God, does the algorithm not seem to care. Is algorithmic synergy a lie, or is all the hype around this movie coming from 1/4 of my audience? Like, no one else on Earth? Only some of the people who watch me care very much, and no one else knows it exists. Because when I do the character cards videos, they at best get half normal viewership. I do the video where I rapturously praise mainline Rhinox, moderately below average views. I've been incredibly positive and incredibly negative about all this stuff. So what about incredibly mid? It's Studio Series Cheetor. And man, this thing is just no fun. Ugh, this is so boring. Starting off with just the colors. Damn, this is dull. All I can get from these pigments is contempt. Contempt for you, the person who likes to look at things that are interesting. Cheetahs are vibrant yellow and black, as was Cheetor. This is honey mustard and medium silver. For some reason, in certain lights, the gray spots look green, and I can't even begin to wrap my head around that. Just think of how this could have looked if they bothered to crank the contrast and saturation. I mean, it wouldn't fix everything, but it would sure help. The best and worst thing I have to say about this sculpt is that it's unoffensive. The shoulder pads suck. These are absolutely ridiculous bulbous pillars popping off his arms like pylons made out of cancer, but at least they bothered to stand out. Everything else is just so smooth. He looks like Sonny from iRobot, covered in condiments. I am so sorry for reminding you that movie exists. I know we all wish we could forget. And I know that I usually complain about legs that are too long, but for real, do these look too short to anyone else? It could just be how much mass this dude has pulled up into his chest. Leg day doesn't even exist to this man's. They're just so wimpy. Detective Kitten legs over here. Hilariously, from the back, I'd honestly say he's more interesting. No real gappiness here. I suppose I can at least applaud them on that. But at the same time, the design becomes kind of more knightly. I suppose that's something else he shares in common with a deeply overrated Age of Extinction Optimus design. This is one of the only Transformers designs I've ever seen that doesn't look like a robot. Like, if you told me that this was just a superhero in a suit, I'd believe you. Like a cross between Black Panther and Iron Man. The quality of the mainline Rhinox was also nicer. This isn't terrible, but like the elbow can't hold a pose, and it just doesn't have the hand feel of the Rhinox. He also has a degree of trouble standing, partly because his feet are tiny, partly because the relatively ugly knees like to bend the wrong way, partly because the toe up is a little too loose. Wonderful. And then you've got the head, and there's just nothing going on here. It's just so smooth. Normally I'd say that faceplates always improve a design, but this doesn't feel like a faceplate. It just feels like there's no detail anywhere. It's just featureless from the tip of his crown to the bottom of his chin. Though speaking of that, the way his two-tone mustard and gray breaks up the sculpt of his face, where specifically the chin stands out and his Filterman jowls are covered, plus the eyebrows, is he giving off incredibly British vibes to anyone else? What are you doing in my bloody wine shack? I say to you, good sir, the royal magistrate shall hear of your invasion into my sovereign schnapps. I am just getting absolutely nothing of Cheetor out of this design. The crest of the helmet is mildly reminiscent of the character, but that's the minorest of minor details. And I suppose that's better than the early Bay designs, where literally not one visual cue of the characters made it over to anyone but Optimus. But this departs from the original design in just about every way, and in all the most boring ways possible at that. It smooths out every harsh edge until he just looks like a human, and a fairly jacked human at that, who, if you know Cheetor, you know doesn't really make a lot of sense. I've heard people theorize that they might be using more of the Beast Machine's designs as inspiration here, and that's a terrible thought. What kind of sinful moron would choose to use the unholiest designs the franchise has ever cursed upon its audiences as the basis for anything new? But honestly, I'm not really seeing its influence in this mode outside of maybe the shoulders and the mustard. He comes with this double tribal spear thing that's fine, it bores the shit out of me, and you can split it in half, so now he's got two short spears about the size of a sword, and I don't know why you wouldn't just use a sword at that point if you're going to have sharpened bladed sections. I suppose at the very least they aren't supposed to replace his hands, so small victories. And then the posability is really boring. Fair play, the head has a good bit of motion to it. Shoulders pull a fair bit less than a 90, but then you can hot rod them up some more, which is ugly, but gets you good range. Elbows either pull like an 89.5 or an 89, I don't care which, it's boring. Really loose wrist swiv, though I don't think that's really going to be a problem. Waist is blocked up by the butt panel, but fully accessible if you deal with that. Hips are unimpeded both forward and to the side, but they only pull like a 30 going back. As with the elbows, so with the knees. These are either an exact 90 or just barely below it. And feet with a really good rocker both left and right, and the aforementioned toe up, which I would normally be all about, but this thing keeps falling over. So the head, shoulders, and feet are good, but the head isn't amazing, the shoulders are ugly, and the feet are a problem. And when both elbows and knees only pull a 90 at best, that's when I really start to snore. And then the transformation is so fucking dull. Did every aspect of this dude need to be so boring? You are supposed to swivel the arm doors around between modes, but I don't know why you would. It literally looks better in both modes to not. It's funny how this steals a trick from Cyclonus' really interesting playbook with the way the head flips inside, and then it manages to make it suck by not really following it up with anything. Plus, the whole thing is just kind of squishy feeling. It doesn't have any Play-Doh factor, and yet the tactile sensation I get from every step of this is chewed gum. If you've never clued in on this about me, transformation is a huge component of why I love Transformers figures, and this just ain't it, Chief. And then considering how little you really do, the cheetah mode could be called amazing. Like, yeah, it really looks like a big cat. A big cat that stands awkwardly because the front legs are too weak, so he looks like an English pointer. There's a bloody bird in those bushes. I demand we take it into custody, so it can stop mucking up my bloody lawn. So it looks pretty good. Unfortunately, it poses like shit. It's got this joint at the head that seemed like it would rather snap than work, so I cut off the two tabs that were on the sides of it for no reason that fit into these slots. And now it works just fine, giving him a huge tilt up at the head. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to make the other pinch joint inside the head actually do its job, so he can't look down at all. Try it and his head will pop off. Mouth opens and closes, legs can only move forwards and back, and only like 30 degrees. The elbows only pull a 90, which really hurts here too, and then the back legs can only bend the wrong direction. And then the ankle tilts only bend both up and in at the same time, which just looks terrible. So, bonus review! Been a long time since I did one of these, even if the Rhinox last week technically also had this happen. It's mainline Rise of the Beasts Cheetor, a heavy retool of the Kingdom Cheetor, with some serious improvements and some serious downgrades. Improvement: the feet are way bigger and way better looking than the Kingdom Cheetor, so this thing now stands far more stably than that thing ever did, and it doesn't look dorky while doing it. Also, the shins are way better. He doesn't look like he stole MC Hammer's pants anymore. Downgrade: the plastic is shitty. This feels so damn cheap and breakable. I had to get this through the Target 3-pack, but I hear that it's individually sold elsewhere. So I don't know if this thing cut corners to bring down the price of the box, or if they're all like this, but man does it make your hands cry to hold this. Improvement: the deco is way more interesting here than the Kingdom figure, and way, way better than the Studio Series one, with its blues, blacks, bronzes, and 2 different tones of yellow. Downgrade: he looks like he has a beer gut with a cat head sticking out of it. It really is hard to describe just how dumpy he looks around the midsection, but I'd say that overall this captures the spirit of the character even more than the Rhinox did, while still managing to do at least some fresh things. There's a bit of hollowness going around, especially in the collar area, but it also makes him look like he's got a neck ruffle, and that's just hilarious to me. The head is pretty good. It's a little cartoony though. I mean, I'll take this, it has personality, but yeah, I don't see how this could ever have been considered for the movie. It looks almost like they tried to base it on the Kingdom show, at least the faces. The helmet is classic Cheetor, but with enough of a realistic twist that I could see it getting used on the actual movie model. It's just the face that screams that's not happening. And ultimately, if we ignore the gut, this looks excellent, though it feels terrible, and I worry about its longevity. I think it's a pretty sick looking update to the character's design, however at the same time, I feel almost like this was intended for Cyberverse rather than the movie. It just has almost no film vibe to it. And while I'd like to live in the world where the movies aren't embarrassed to be about the thing that I love, even in that instance, I don't know that the design would work. It's just too cartoony, which is not a negative to me, it just doesn't fit a film. Accessories are pretty good. He's got his gut gun, which is a little piddly, and it's got this big old trough running through it, but it's okay. And hilariously, I think that this is the first good tail weapon we've ever gotten, as it does actually have a bladed section at the tip, and it's swinging the right way, so it doesn't look like it's just ineffectually dinked off an enemy like the Kingdoms did. Plus, there is like a bike chain under it, and I wonder if that means that this is supposed to be like a chainsaw tail whip, which is easily daft enough to be awesome. So, solid weaponry, but the posability is kind of weird. Head with a massive tilt up, shoulders pull a bit less than a 90, elbows pull a good bit less than a 90. Both of these are very painful to deal with. I've never seen anyone do this before, and it's kind of genius for its simplicity, but there's a ball joint in the wrists that gives him some swiv and narcissa wrists. Waist rotates, but only like 30 degrees, which is about as much as a human, but he's got no robo-waist. Legs are slightly impeded going forward, slightly impeded out to the side, and can't go back at all, a good bit more than 90 knees, and feet with a good tilt and a huge toe down. So really, that's pretty bad, and every time I go to handle this, I'm kind of shocked by how bad it is. The sculpt just looks so dynamic. It always seems cooler than its limited posing should allow, but the wrists are genius. The transformation kind of sucks. It's a worse version of the Kingdom Cheetor with really shitty plastic that feels like it's going to break at every step of the way, with tolerances that are too tight, clearances that are a pain in the butt, extra parts forming, and it has absolutely no idea what it wants to do with the arms. But the way the legs work are a significant improvement, and once again, kind of genius. And you end up with this pretty good, but very flawed cheetah. I mean, for starters, the arms are just chilling out right in plain view at the belly, and there's nothing you can do about it. They're also pegged in very poorly, and you better hope you don't lose the parts-forming gut gun, because if you do, there's also just a giant hole through the cheetah's midsection. But if you ignore all that, and the incredibly stiff plastic, then this does look pretty cool. This I definitely see being in line with the movie aesthetic, even if I'm still offended that the Beast character's alt modes just flat out fail at being disguises, like, at all. Posability is better where it counts, by a lot. He can't look up, but he does still have an opening mouth, arms that actually work at the shoulder, and can go forward, back, in, out, up, elbows that pull like a 90 forward and a little backwards, and back legs that kick the right way, the wrong way, kick back, and out to the side. So ultimately, this is just so much more expressive in Beast Mode. And while I think that neither of these is a slam dunk, I think that there is kind of obviously a superior one. Neither one of these handles the transformation well, with the Studio Series being so boring and the mainline one being bad, but the mainline one has the courtesy to be something. Sure, it's a bad something, and so is the robot mode posability, but the robot mode looks great, the accessories are great, the beast mode looks great, and the beast posability is great. Meanwhile, the Studio Series looks really mediocre, and it feels mediocre, and it poses mediocre, and it comes with mediocre stuff, and it transforms mediocre, and the alt mode looks remarkably convincing, even if I don't think it looks as cool as the mainline, and then the beast mode posing is better than a brick, but somewhere between bad and mediocre. It's just so fucking boring. The mainline one isn't amazing, but there's at least something to grab onto there. There is any reason at all to like it, and you just can't say the same about the Studio Series. It gives me no reason to give a shit. I'm not mixed. I'm so bored, I hate it. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.